everyone, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up. I have my all-star cast back in the um, booth tonight. Yeah, that's what I'd call it. Back with me tonight. I have my co-host, Mr. Smokin' Jeremy B. How are you tonight, Jeremy?
Fantastic. Any day I wake up is better than the alternative.
That's true. That's true. And we have fresh off vacation, Mr. Ralph Williams back in the house.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Candy. It's great to be back. I had a nice, refreshing, relaxing little trip that my wife and I took to Greensburg, got to see the Little River Band, got my shirt autographed, and then we got a little small guitar, the Night Owl guitar that they're marketing now, the Little River Band, and it's signed by the group.
Awesome.
Yep.
I saw pictures that you posted on Facebook. It looked like a great time.
It was a great time, Candy. Front row seats. Every Little River Band concert I've gone to, I've had great seats, and I've been to about maybe a half dozen or more of them. So
awesome. And Scott's longtime co-host of the Sports Exchange, Mr. Author himself, George Eichhorn.
Hey, Candy, we're here. It's time.
Yes, it's time to get fired up. Well, there's a lot happening in the sports world these days. I'm gonna kick it off to my co-host because he's really the NFL expert of the group. So I'm gonna kick it off to him. He can update us and lead us with the NFL stuff. Mr. Jeremy B.
Well, over the last 24 hours, there's been a plethora of cap casualties across the board. Yesterday, we heard about 3/4 of the secondary for the Bills starting secondary getting cut, which is kind of crazy considering you were talking about Justin Poyer, Tre'Davious White, and then the other guy that wasn't that good. But then you had them restructure Von Miller. They also cut their backup running back, a backup guard, and they traded away their backup center. All these moves equaled up $36.16 million being cleared off their cap, and there's still $9 million in the hole. So there's more moves to be made for them still. Michael Thomas was cut from the Saints today. Justin Simmons was cut from the Broncos. Keanu Neal, as Ralph mentioned, was cut from the Steelers, who's actually a good safety, and I actually just don't think he fit his scheme, the scheme there with the Steelers as much. I think he's more of a single high safety than a two-zone safety, and plays well in the box as well because he is a good tackler. So there's lots of interesting moves out there. We already know if they're that far in the hole, they can't afford to sign AJ Epenesa, who is kind of one of my guys I've been near and dear in my heart and hitting all the Lions message boards saying, please, Brad Holmes, sign this guy.
George, any comments on the NFL action lately?
Well, there's always going to be a lot of movement, but I agree with Jeremy. It seems to really have heated up in the last 24 to 48 hours. You're seeing some movement going on, and of course, free agency will bring us a lot more movements. The combine is done, and that was an opportunity for some of the younger kids to show their wares. It's going to be a fun time. I mean, and here in Michigan, of course, we're super excited because Detroit was selected to host the NFL draft coming up here in about a month or so, the 24th, 25th timeframe of April. So there's a lot of work to be done by a lot of teams right now. You saw a lot of assistant coaches moving around, and some were hired and some were fired. And my God, even the Detroit Lions had, after a great season, they had I don't know, what was it, Jeremy? 4 or 5 guys are gone, coaches?
4 assistants are gone. 3 have been rehired. They're still looking for another one. John Fox is gone, and I can't say that the defense got better with him being as the assistant DC. Dre Bly is gone, but I don't think he got a fair shake because we had so many injuries in the secondary. We had to start a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one that really surprised me. Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, like you said, it wasn't his fault. And But no, I see a lot of movement, and I think this is going to happen all the time, Candy, because you've got so many players with expiring contracts or too big of a contract, or the teams can't afford to have so many large salaries, cap room, cap space, dead cap money. I mean, this is the wide world of the business part we're seeing here of the NFL right now. I mean, it's a long-winded answer to your question, but no, I'm not surprised about the movement, but it's an opportunity for all the teams to take a look and pick a, take chances on some guys that are not, coming back to their teams from the 2023 season.
Ralph, your thoughts of the NFL offseason right now?
Well, like George and Jeremy said, it's a lot of movement. You have teams that just don't know how to manage their salary cap, and what happens is they got to get rid of players and they got to liquidate players all the time. And those teams that do that every year, they're the ones that always fail. And they got to get with it. We have, fortunately, here with the Steelers, Omar Khan is our GM, but he is very good at working with the salary cap. And we have some guys on our team, and I know there's some guys on a few other teams that are bums and they need to go. And it's really sad that there are some good players that are gone, but with high salaries, they have to maybe go to another team on the cheap. And it's a 365 day yearly thing with the NFL. It doesn't end ever, and there's always NFL talk to go around. And the draft's coming up next. And, that's going to be interesting to see where everyone who drafts who, where Caleb Williams goes, where, some of these other guys go. And we're going to find out. But right now we're in free agency. There's a big frenzy, people moving around. The biggest one was Russell Wilson. I mean, who's going to get him? Who's going to sign him? Who's going to be able to deal with him? So we'll find out.
Who wants to deal with
Go ahead.
I just say, everybody thinks he's still great, but his numbers have been declined ever since he hurt his leg that year with Seattle. Every year he's gotten worse. And he had a 5-game stretch last year where he looked like the Russell Wilson of old, and then he ran into the Lions, and that buzzsaw ruined him.
Yeah, well, Jeremy, don't forget he lost his quarterback's coach, Dave Canellis. And Dave Canellis was great with working with him. And when you lose your quarterback coach like that, there we are. So, that's why he slipped in Seattle when Canellis left for Tampa.
Right.
Well, he slipped in Denver too. He slipped. I was just gonna say he slipped in Denver too. And
Yes,
what they gave up for that man is ridiculous. And they will be paying. They'll be paying for that for many, many seasons, as we know, because that was too much. Too much. The Broncos, forget it.
Yeah.
Well,
George, it bit the Rams in the butt. Remember, McVay kept giving up draft picks and going after free agents, and then when they got hurt, he didn't have no draft picks there to build on. Nothing. Finally, in the last last year was his first full draft since he's been the coach. What was it, the second maybe?
Because the Lions had it.
Yeah, no, I didn't say that. Well, I mean a full draft as far as like getting some picks. You know what I mean? I mean, in the past, he's had no draft or a couple picks, and that's it. But, that bit him in the butt. So now it's going to bite Denver real bad.
In other news, Javon Kinlaw is not being re-signed with San Francisco and hitting free agency. And I think that's a big mistake because everybody, points out how good Eric Armstead is. When your DT2 is decent and takes on a double team, that frees up that great DT1. I think that's a big mistake. And that's another one that I actually wanted in the draft the year we took Okuda.
A little upset there, Jeremy, or what?
I mean, there was 5 guys that we could have took that year that I'd have been like, oh, yeah, that's a good move. I mean, if
I know. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you heard Matt Patricia the day before that draft, he was all high on Derek Brown, Isaiah Simmons, and Javon Kinlaw. And then he casually mentioned, and I heard something about that Okuda kid too. And when it's a bad pick, when the coach that is bad walks off the camera so he doesn't make faces during the draft because that was the COVID year, that 2020 draft. He walked off the camera and left his dog sitting there facing his computer camera while right after Bob Quinn said, and with the third pick, the Lions select Jeff Okudah. All you saw was his eyes roll. I think his ears flexed so hard his pencil broke.
Oh man.
Him and Mike Tice. Mike Tice was good for having a pencil in his ear, man. He still does it too, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of crazy. I do know that there are rumors out there now that the Jets and of course Aaron Rodgers isn't done poaching from the Packers to trying to make the Jets the Packers East, and that they're looking at David Bakhtiari now, Mr. Injury Prone.
Wow.
Go ahead. But hey, take him. You know, he's not getting younger and he's been injured so many times that it's not even funny. But the other news that I wanted to kind of talk to, and it's not really NFL, but it's related to the NFL because it has to do with the Kansas City Miami Dolphins game where it was so cold. They are now saying most fans who were referred to the Missouri Burn Center after suffering frostbite injuries during that wild card playoff game where it was so cold. You guys remember that, right?
Yes.
Yep.
They're recommending 70% of the people who were referred to the center for frostbite now have been advised to have scheduled amputations. The patients who aren't failing amputations still have to deal with lingering effects. They say it's a lifelong process. They'll have sensitivity and pain for the rest of their lives and are always will be more susceptible to frostbite in the future. So they're educating people that yes, it was cold. Yes, they kept the game. One of the guys said he took his hands were exposed to the elements for like 5 minutes because he was building a tent pre-game so they could do tailgating, and now he's having problems. He might have to amputate some of his fingers. So all I'm going to say to people is if there is another game like that, just please be careful. Please be careful.
And Candy, thank you for mentioning that because I can relate to this, and Jeremy knows too, the days when the Detroit Lions played, of course, at Tiger Stadium. And we didn't have perhaps as frigid a situation as Buffalo has. At Green Bay, it gets colder too than Detroit does usually in the winter. But boy, oh boy, I can remember going to those games and sitting in those stands, and I agree, they were just bitter cold. I mean, we had one game against the Minnesota Vikings on Thanksgiving Day. Obviously, Detroit has that early slot, as you all know. And it was snowing like crazy that day. We had a surprise Thanksgiving snowstorm. Lions lost. They were shut out. I forget, 20 or 27-0. And even Alan Page scored on he scored and rumbled into the end zone for the Vikings. I'll never forget. But yeah, it was a terrible game for us. Just terrible. Me and my buddy were sitting in the stands. So I agree. I mean, you know, there's a love, obviously passion for sports, but sometimes you just have to make sure that either don't go, or if you are going, you better bring some extra precaution to your, like you said, your toes, your knees, your whatever part of your face, whatever. You don't want those things to happen to you. I'm really saddened to hear about that, and the
that is sad. Yeah.
Ralph?
Ralph, you were going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with George that it's sad. I just said it was sad. That's all. You know.
Have you gone, Ralph, to outdoor games in Pittsburgh much, or the Steelers?
Back when I was a kid, I never went to a Steeler game, but I sat out in some cold weather at Pitt games because my grandfather and I always went to every single solitary Pitt game that was there for football. We went. Now, I will tell you, I have worked in the cold at Acrisure Stadium. I used to be an usher, so I had to work out in the cold, and it was bad. I mean, I had gloves on, coat. hat. I had something around my face. I mean, it was really awful. And I worked some bad, cold games. And then when I worked for the security firm that I had to quit working for because welfare threatened to take my Medicaid because they said I made too much money. So I had to stop working for them. It was a security firm. And I sat in my scooter and operated an elevator, and it was cold. So I had to wear a coat. It was like below zero or something. So I've worked some cold games. Yeah, I know exactly what goes on. But I'm smart enough to know, because I'm an Eagle Scout, that you need to bundle up and make sure that you have, the proper, wear, gloves, maybe double up on your socks, wear, the right kind of boots and shoes. You got people out here now wearing sandals and it's 20 below zero. I mean, you just don't do stuff like that. And that's probably what the case of that is. And, supposedly when you drink, and if you drink enough of beer and alcohol or whatever it is you drink at these games, it's supposed to keep you warm. So I don't know. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens with this. But it's really sad that that's a situation. But if it's me, I wouldn't go to that game in that cold. I sit at home watching on my TV screen and stay warm.
I hear you. I hear you.
I was a vendor too through River Stadium when I was. That was one of my first jobs. I worked some cold Steeler games, so I mean I understand how hot it is. It's not pleasurable.
Yep. I can attest. I wasn't, even though I'm from Wisconsin and I've been to Lambeau Field numerous times, I have never been into what like was as cold as like the Ice Bowl. But I do remember we were there. My dad took me to my first playoff game, and they were playing. Oh, I believe it was Arizona, and it was cold that day. But what made it more cold was it snowed, and it snowed right before game time. So there was like snow in the stands and on your feet. So you were they didn't have time to shovel off because it was still snowing during part of the game. So you were standing on top of snow. And so you like even your feet got that cold, wet feeling. And so that made it that much colder, but it wasn't freezing temperatures like below zero, but it still felt cold. But speaking of safety, there was a women's soccer game. It was the U.S. against Canada match. And both coaches have agreed that this game should have been stopped because the rain was coming down so bad. The field was so soaked. Players were slipping and sliding. And it could have caused a lot more injuries. And so it was up to the refs. And here again, I'm going to go on a bandwagon where these refs are not taking into effect player safety. I said it. I was at FAU men's basketball game. The Tulane coach was always on the FAU scoring side of the in the court in their way. In fact, the boys on the FAU team went to the officials and said, they're in our way. They're being the sixth man on your defense, and this is unfair. People can get hurt. Officials have to know that and take control of the game. I just don't understand how they don't. You see now in hockey, let's say, they're let's face it, we all go there. Most people like a good brawl in a hockey game, but you will see them stop the minute they go to the ice, or they're very cautious if someone's helmet is off. But there was a brawl the other night, George. We were watching the Red Wings play, and I believe it was it Colorado that they had a brawl?
Yeah, I think it was a Colorado game. They had a lot of scuffling and fights in that game, correct?
They did. Sometimes the refs just have to take control. Yes, sometimes you let them play out, but sometimes if it comes down to safety, the refs need to take better control. That would be my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that one. Yep, Jeremy does.
I'm still waiting to go to a boxing match and have a hockey game break out.
That's a great line.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Nice.
That was it.
Anybody else?
No, I agree with you on that, Candy, because here's the thing. whether it's hockey, college, or anything. It's all about money. Nobody cares about safety anymore. You know, the NCAA, they're a bunch of liars. You know, they keep saying, "Oh, well, we're concerned about safety for players and players' well-being." Well, if that's the case, then why do you let Stanford in the ACC and make teams like Pitt travel all the way to SMU and Stanford for their games? You know, things like that. You got Oregon now in the Big Ten. They got to travel all the way to Penn State or Rutgers. I mean, come on. You know, it's safety is not an issue anymore. It's all about money, and nobody cares. And it's in every sport now. It's even in high school. I mean, you know, you got parents fighting coaches. You got board members on the school boards firing coaches because poor little Johnny didn't get in the game, and then they're fighting in the stands. It's terrible. It's just the whole sport of the sport is all about money, and who cares about safety?
Well, we've talked about it before. Court storming. That's one of the things
Yes.
that they haven't figured out either. And people are getting injured with that. And how do we control fans? Fans from running out onto the fields. You know, we've seen it. I mean, TV has tried to downplay it so they won't show it because they don't want to publicize it because they don't want more people to get notoriety. But you've
Right.
seen it even in NFL games. You see it in baseball games. You see it all over the place. But one of the topics I wanted to get into, and the name of the show today is Tradition. And I guess the reason why I saw that, wanted to talk about that, is I saw an article today that talked about, and I'm sorry, George and Jeremy, I know you guys are Lions fans, and so you are not Packers fans, and this is a tradition that the Packers do, but I thought it was interesting, so I kind of wanted to share if any of you know the origin of the Green Bay Packers bicycle tradition. Do you guys even know what the bicycle tradition is?
No.
No,
No.
I was ready to take a nap. You said Packers.
No, Candy, is it, did they ride a bike around the stadium in the cold, or, you know, before the game? Is that what they do?
It's not before games, it's before practice.
Oh, okay.
It's during training camp.
Right.
So basically, years ago, this tradition actually started pre-Lombardi. It started in 1958. And this guy's name is Dave Goodneer. And he was 10 years old when him and his brother, with brand new bicycles, took their bicycles down to practice for the training camp. And the guys would come out of their locker room and then they would walk to the practice field. And so these kids every morning would take their bikes, spend every morning, every afternoon watching. One of the kids, his favorite player was John Smynek. He was number 27 and he was a defensive back. They'd pedal from the locker room entrance to the stadium and wait for players to arrive on the buses and go to the stadium to suit up for practices. Then they'd sit on the bleachers and watch practice. One day, this guy worked up enough courage and went to John Smynek as he came out of the locker room and asked him if he'd like a ride down to the practice field. He smiled and got on my bike and handed me his helmet. I rode on the back of his bike and held on to him. Once I had delivered him, I pedaled back up, picked up, and went back and picked up as many players as he could. Now, he did that all summer. There are times when he would pick up numerous, and I'm surprised more kids didn't catch on that first year. Coach McLean saw him offering rides, didn't care. But then when Vince Lombardi came in 1959, he paddled to Vince Lombardi and asked the coach politely if it was all right to keep riding the players on his bike. He said he didn't mind as long as nobody got hurt. He remembers one incident, and this I thought was very funny. He remembers one incident when he was at the locker room and he was waiting for his player, which is John Smynek, who normally came out first. But the problem is he wasn't the first player to come out. But this kid always only took John Smyzik first. There was a problem. This one day, the person that came out was Bart Starr came out first. And he's like, oh. And everybody knew that normally you just got on. So Bart Starr came over to him and threw his leg over his bike, and he politely said, I'm sorry, Bart. I always take John Smizek first. So he's like, that's okay, no problem. He got off the bike, started walking. Soon John Smizek came out. He got on, he drove him down. Kid went back, picked up Bart Starr, who was halfway already there, to the practice field and dropped him off. But it was just, and this tradition has been going on since 1958, and they do it every year, and all kinds of kids, all ages, bring their different bikes. And it's kind of interesting because some of the bikes are girls' bikes. I've seen little tricycles. They're trying to ride the tricycles. But it was just it's a very fun, interesting tradition, and it gets NFL players involved with kids. So, are there traditions that you guys can think of from teams that you know of, what they do that kind of raised an eye to you or you think is neat or different?
Well, I think that Detroit is rather unique because, and I know this is true probably at other cities too, but you've heard the term that, Tigers opening day, for example, is a national holiday or a Detroit holiday. And in all the years I've been, going to baseball games and watching games, and Jeremy, you can attest to this, the fandom here in Detroit, it's just an unbelievable day. It's like a spring holiday. Kids are skipping school, adults are skipping their jobs. And I'm not into the drinking thing, okay, but all the restaurants and bars in the downtown stadium district are full because people want to be there, even if they're not holding a ticket to the Tigers in Comerica Park for the opener. They still want to be part of the atmosphere, which is all surrounding of the game itself. And to me, and again, I'm not going to pontificate on the drinking or not, but I'm just saying that it's just a great feeling because that hope springs eternal, as they say. Everybody's got a chance on opening day, and the whole baseball world is starting. But I tell you what, I have never seen, and of course, Jeremy is going to back me up on this one. Of course, our Thanksgiving Day tradition, where fathers and grandfathers went to the game, and they're passing on to the children and the grandchildren the tickets or the right to go to the game to see the Lions play on Thanksgiving Day. Those are the two big ones that stand out for me. It doesn't involve, like you said, kids and bicycles, and it really doesn't involve access to the players themselves, but it just strikes at two of the biggest games on any sports calendar for Detroit. Tigers opening day, and then the Lions on Thanksgiving.
So I'm gonna say, interesting enough, George, my dad loved, and when I say loved the Brewers, he loved the Milwaukee Brewers. He grew up a fan of the Braves, Milwaukee Braves, and then the Brewers. And he worked for the Brewers. He was an usher. But first and foremost, he was a school teacher. He was a high school teacher. So I never could go to opening day because he would not allow me to skip school because education was more important than watching opening day of the baseball game of season. Even though he loved, in his retirement, he worked for Milwaukee Brewers for years. He was an usher for years, but he would also go to spring training in Arizona to watch the Brewers in preparation for the season in order to be able to talk intelligently about the Brewers, but more importantly, to just be able to sit and relax and watch the Brewers before, because once he got to regular season, he was an usher and he always worked. So he never did. I would say another interesting tradition, or not interesting, but a fun tradition, was at Badger home football games between the third and fourth quarter. the infamous jump around that they have made famous. And I will tell you, I took Scott to his first Badger game, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And he was up in the press box and he did not know what was happening between the third and fourth quarter. He thought we were having an earthquake because the stadium was a rocking and shaking. And he was like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "It's called jump around. Just relax and have fun." And but that was one of their traditions. Ralph, any traditions you can think of?
Yeah, I have a couple. I'm friends with the Vento family, Franco's Italian Army, which was developed by El Vento. And they were a tradition at all Steeler games. And also Jimmy Poe, who used to sing a polka at the Steeler games. And I have a good one here for Pitt. There's a tradition that at the end of the third quarter, we play a rendition of "Sweet Caroline" by Neil Diamond. What it does is it goes "Sweet Caroline," and then it goes "Let's go Pitt" instead of "Good time," and then "Good times always feel so good." That's a tradition at Pitt games. And then the Franco's Italian Army always cheering away, and Jimmy Poe singing, his polka. There's a lot of traditions there. And then the Pirate games. We have a traditional pierogi race where the pierogies run around, and that's a tradition for the Pirates. So we have some really good traditions here in Pittsburgh that we've done over the years.
Jeremy, any traditions you can think of you want to talk about?
Well, it's kind of like opening day at Ford Field. You're talking about the tradition there, just like the stadium bars all open up, everything opens up. There's like a carnival of stuff to do right next to the field. But if you walk just another half mile east of it, you've got the whole Eastern Market, which is like 12 different pavilions filled with people with wonderful food, great parties. And it doesn't matter which team you're a fan of, the home team or the away team, everybody gets along and has a good time. After the game, it's another story, but before the game, it's great.
Aha. Any other besides we're not getting to my town just yet, but is there any other topics that anybody wants to bring to the table tonight?
Not really. I don't have anything.
Okay. So let's talk my town because we talk about in each episode of Fire Up on Thursday nights, we talk about some interesting topic that is happening in the sports world, either in the town you live in or the town that you grew up in. So let's start with Ralph tonight.
Well, I live and I grew up here in Pittsburgh. I've been here my whole life. What I'm unhappy about is our sports teams. This is the worst they've ever been. The Steelers, haven't made it to the Super Bowl in a while. The Pirates, forget about them at times. Okay. The Penguins now are stinking up the joint. And the only team that's really doing anything right now here in Pittsburgh is the Riverhounds, Pittsburgh, of our USL soccer team. They've been to the championship a few times. This year they lost in the first round of playoffs. Last year they made it to the championship and lost to Louisville. So, it's pretty sad. And our Pitt football this year was bad, 3-9. So it's been a rough year for Pittsburgh sports, and I hope things get better. I'm hoping that Kyle Dubas, the GM for the Penguins, decides to start liquidating some of these players because we got a bunch of guys that are making a lot of money and not doing anything. Erik Karlsson, one of them. And then the Pirates now are starting to spend a little bit of money. They re-signed Mitch Keller. They brought in some guys who, they're developing some people. They're getting there. If they make 500 this year, I'll be surprised, with what they have. And we're going to find out. The Steelers, on the other hand, continue to be mediocre. And I don't care what anyone says about Mike Tomlin. When the idea is, as Bill Cowher would say, if you're not in it to win the Super Bowl, you shouldn't be in the NFL. So that's my town stuff tonight, Candy. Thank you.
Okay. George, what's happening in your town?
This little team called the Detroit Red Wings are in a little bit of a slump right now. So, the winning streak is over. They've lost 3 in a row now. Their captain is out for a minimum of 2 weeks with a lower body injury, Dylan Larkin. And so now I think you got to take a more caustic approach if you're a Red Wings fan. They still have a 4-point lead. In the race for the wild cards. There's 2 wild card teams, as you guys know, that make it in each of the conferences. But that lead was about 8 points just about a week ago. So the Red Wings better watch out because it's a tough grind. They lost to Colorado the other night. They got to play a lousy Arizona team. And I tell you what, they better win that game because right after that, they got to go to Las Vegas and play the defending Stanley Cup champions. The other thing in my town, and I mentioned this on Pundit's Pundit tonight, would you believe if I gave you a record of 19 wins and 105 losses? I'm not kidding you. The Pistons have won 10 games and lost 52. The University of Michigan men's basketball won 8 games and lost 22. And the University of Detroit Mercy Titans men's team won 1 game and lost 31. Just a horrible, horrible record of 19 and 105 for 3 of our teams that are close to this geographic area. Now, that being said, Michigan State Spartans men and the Oakland University men, which is in a city called Rochester, they both have a chance to make the big dance. So I'm not taking anything away from Tom Izzo's Spartans or Greg Campy's Golden Grizzlies. But those other 3 records are just atrocious from the Pistons, the U of M basketball, and the University of Detroit Mercy, which was where Dick Vitale got his had some great years as coach. So those are the things that come to my mind, Candy. Kind of a negative,
Okay.
my town, but there's still hope.
Okay. Smoking Jeremy B.
Well, mine has to do with the Lions. Today they brought in CFL interception leader Quantez Stiggers in for a pre-draft visit because he actually went straight from high school to the semi-pro fan-controlled league where Terrell Owens came out of retirement for a couple of years ago. And he actually was the league leader in interceptions for that league the 2 years it ran. So we're talking about a kid who decided to forego going to college because NIL wasn't as prominent where he was. He came out of an Atlanta school and Georgia hadn't ratified it yet. It was passed, but it wasn't ratified into law. So he went straight to semi-pros, did his 2 years there, then was signed by the Argonauts and was the interception leader on a field that's 55 yards wide and 110 yards long, which means that's 5 square yards extra wide and 10 square yards extra long. And he was the interception leader. He's another one of those guys that you really don't think would have a stamina problem in the NFL. He was not invited to the combine, but he is projected to run between a 4.4 and a 4.45. This kid is 6'2" and 205 pounds. At 21 years old, I hope he's the 7th round pick for the Lions at 247. If it isn't him, it better be Joshua Carte of Stanford, a kicker, because Michael Badgley needs competition to push him.
Okay, my town. First of all, I'm going to say I live in South Florida. Right now, being a Panthers fan, they're doing awesome. They're having a good year. But we've seen it before where they've done really well in the regular season. Let's see if it transfers into the postseason. But what I really wanted to talk about, and the name of the show was Tradition. And the tradition I'm going to say is going to start happening really soon. We turned the calendar on the month. It is now March. And what happens in March but March Madness? It is exciting to be both of where I'm from, and where I'm from is Wisconsin, and I live in South Florida. Right now in the top 25, Marquette from Milwaukee is rated 8th. They're having a really good year. They'll be in the dance. But also down here in South Florida, we have USF, which is Scott's alma mater. They're ranked 24th. FAU just fell out of the top 25, but they made the Final Four last year. And then there's also Wisconsin ended their season tonight at home with a win, and hopefully they'll make the big dance. Even if they don't, it's been an exciting season. College basketball is here. The tournaments are starting, and it's just a fun time of year. If you're a college basketball fan, and if you're a basketball fan, if you're not watching college basketball, I don't know why. Because to be honest with you, for me, college basketball is way more fun to watch than the NBA, where they don't know defense at all. But it's exciting to watch. It's exciting time of year, and it is a tradition, March Madness. So with that, I want to let everybody tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and how they can subscribe to you and watch your shows and your channels or read what you write. So let's start with Ralph Williams.
All right, thank you, Candy. You can catch me on. I have my own YouTube channel. Please subscribe. I'm up to about 139. I'm looking to get to about 200 by the end of the year, and I hope it's even more than that.
Ralph,
please subscribe.
Is your YouTube Ralph Williams, or is that how
Yes, Ralph Williams? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's my YouTube and Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter X, and I also am on Tumblr. And I have my own radio show every Tuesday on Beaver County Radio, 4 to 6 p.m. with me and Smoke and Jim Frazier. We talk about all assets of sports this Tuesday. Our guest will be Matt Venzel from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to talk Penguin hockey. And I have Mike Mitchell, not the football player, but the reporter. He reports for the UFL. So we're going to find out about spring football coming up with the UFL. And then Tad Morey to talk about Duquesne sports. That is this Tuesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Beaver County Radio.
Okay, awesome.
And I have a bunch of other shows, including start March 11th. All my regular programming comes back. And I have a new show called Sports Capsule, which means I'll be coming on at any time of the day to give you sports updates on things that are going on in Pittsburgh sports.
So will all those be on your YouTube channel? So
yes,
if they subscribe, they'll get notifications?
YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter X platforms.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. George.
Mr. George is holding a copy of Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, and you'll find a link at the end of my column where you'll find great writers such as Jeremy Ballrick, Scott Morganroth, George Eichhorn. Oh, no, not me. But anyways, there is a link at the end of my column if you'd like to take a look at the book. Thank you very much for those that have purchased it already. You can find me at the South Florida Tribune, and I write for the Motor City Tribune. Also, catch me on 108 Stitches and Pundits Pundit and Fire Up and the Sports Exchange. Great shows that been a privilege to be part of. You can reach me at gichorn@yahoo.com. You can reach me on Facebook, same thing, my name, and also subscribe to, if you're part of the Twitter family, I'm at SanDG Sports 99. So thank you very much, Candy, for hosting, and Jeremy for co-hosting tonight. It's been a great show.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Smokin' Jeremy B. Besides subscribing to the little red button that you see down by Ralph for the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, and then going to Ralph's YouTube channel, Jeremy, I think you have your own as well.
Well, among other things, yes, I am on the SouthFloridaTribune.com, as George Eichhorn mentioned. And those guys are the great authors. I'm the new guy on the block there. You can also find me right here on the South Florida Tribune channel for any of the Fire Up shows, which I'm always a part of. You can also find me occasionally on Inside the Pigskin and anywhere else Scott may call me up. Who knows? Maybe one day it'll be on something other than just the plethora of sports people. Maybe it'll be a one-on-one. You never know. But that being said, you can also find me on my channel, which is Kneecap Biting with the Motor City Lions. And I'm also on another YouTube channel simultaneously which is Football Talk 365, where I do my morning talk show, 11 a.m. Monday through Friday, Lions Talk with Smoke and Jeremy B, and my co-host Dan Von Doom Leonard. And then you also have, of course, the title of the channel is my primetime shows at 9:30 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays is NFL based, where I talk about every team. I've been doing the mock drafts for every division every week so far. Next week is the NFC North and the AFC North division.
Awesome.
And I actually treat each team just like I would if I was their GM. I look at best player available and what the team's needs are. I actually do the research.
I believe that about you. I really do, because you do research and you know your stuff. So I give you a lot of credit, and that's probably why you're my co-host too. Because I'm not, I got some smarts too.
Hey, you're
But-
smart.
Anyway, so if you're watching us now, you're catching us on the South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. Please, if you haven't already, if you see that red subscribe button, that means you didn't hit it. Please do so. Share us, like us, tell your friends all about us. If you like baseball, Monday nights, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. If Tuesday nights, Inside the Pigskin, where we even have a former NFL player on. And a lot of times we have Coach Bonamego, who actually coached in the NFL as well. Wednesday nights, Sports Exchange. Thursday nights, Pundit, Fire Up. We do take Fridays off, believe it or not. And typically we take Saturdays off too, but that's when we're out in the field. So I want to say that my husband Scott Morganroth will be out in the field on Saturday. Unfortunately, I have to work, and he's going to the FAU men's last home basketball game on Saturday against Memphis. And then next week, Friday and Saturday, he will be heading out to Sebring, Florida. He is going to cover racing, auto racing, endurance racing, the 12 hours of Sebring, which happen on Saturday, but they have pre-races on Friday. So Saturday, I think it's at 9:40 a.m. till 9:40 p.m. They constantly race. And when I say the 12 hours of Sebring, if you're not familiar with it, it is, as far as endurance racing goes, I'm going to say it's probably one of the most, how do I want to put this?
Challenging. Grueling.
Grueling and challenging, because it's on an old air base. And so it's not even, it's not a racetrack like these smooth, like Daytona 500. It's it's more of an off-road track. And it really, when you talk to racers, they're saying how grueling it really is and how much give and shock there is in the road and the race. But he's going to be covering that Friday and Saturday of next week. So come on over, pop over to South Florida Tribune. You never know when he might go live. Go to his Facebook, Scott Morganroth, or South Florida Tribune, because he might be posting videos up there. But otherwise, sometimes we do Fire Up on the weekends. Sometimes we do Professor and Pupil. You just never know. But if you like to listen to podcasts, all of our shows are on our podcast, are on wherever you get your podcast, iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, all of those. But one of the most important things is Scott wrote a book, Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring of visionary leaders. He wrote this book last year. Please go out and buy it. It's on Amazon and Kindle. We're going to be putting it out on more platforms, and we'll tell you as we do so. But right now you can get it on Amazon and Kindle. It's about him being in the media for over 40 years and how media has changed, people he's interviewed. Go read it. It's a good read. Let me think. Did I miss anything?
By the
If
way,
you wanna
don't forget, this guy up here, he wrote the Ford.
He did. George wrote the foreword. Yes, Mr.
Forward,
George.
march. Forward. No.
Forward
Thank
down
you.
the field.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And he did a really good job. So you want to get the book and read it. But this has been fun, guys. I really enjoyed the show tonight. Thank you for joining me. And Jeremy, you want to close us out?
Sure. As I like to say at the end of every single one of my shows, try every day to be a better person than you were the day before. It's the only way to make the world a better place. It starts in here. Much love.
Much love, everyone. Have a good week.